All right, everybody, welcome to Hack and Grow Rich. This is going to be our first episode in this specific format with my co-host, Bart Baggett. Bart has been on CNN. He's been on Larry King Live, The Today Show, CBS, you name it. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, in 1,500 radio shows. He's been on Howard Stern, and he's the author of over 10 books, from topics ranging from success to relationships, to self-help. He's written a book called The Magic Question that's hit Amazon's #1 bestseller list in self-help. And he's just overall a pretty generous and awesome dude. And one thing I think that'll be really interesting for you guys to know about Bart is that he is one of the leading handwriting experts in the world. So, Bart, why don't you tell us one thing that maybe our listeners and viewers might not know about you?
Wow. Well, after that intro, thank you. I feel so honored. Um, I think most people don't know because I'm known as the world's #1 handwriting expert. Then occasionally see me on stage talking about internet marketing. Like literally, I'm an OG. Like I'm on stage in 2000 with my internet marketing buddies. But most people don't know I've been in 14 movies, died by a shark, died by Moby Dick, got died in a helicopter crash from a van, and pretty sure was a Secret Service agent for a fake president.
No way. I didn't even know that about you. That's
Oh,
pretty.
I'm in the Green Hornet, which is on Netflix this month. Now, if you blink, you'll miss me. Everything got cut out on the floor, but I did spend an evening with the director, so I have a very pathetic acting career to brag about to my grandkids.
But I always think that's pretty amazing, right? Because we're in LA, or I mean, you used to be in LA, and in LA, it's kind of a normal thing for like you to be in a movie. It's like, oh yeah. I extras on the new Robert De Niro film last week, and it's just a normal thing. And in other places in the country, and more so other places in the world, like stuff like that does not happen.
When I go to India, I'll show my little 3-minute video reel of me dying in a helicopter, and they're dumb B movies. I mean, they're from Asylum, or there's really these silly movies, and they will treat me like I'm a Hollywood movie star. It's absolutely hilarious because you and I know these low budget movies, and I mean, it's just me. It's not like I got there because of my friends. Like I auditioned and I did the acting thing, and I've earned my stripes, but still, it was never famous. But you're right, it holds a lot of weight outside of LA. Of course, in LA, it's hard to impress anybody. That's why you're impressive, because people actually in LA that live in LA, you're still impressed. They still impressed by you. Not me though.
Well, yeah, I mean, LA is a very interesting place, and it's interesting, which kind of will lead us into the topic that we're talking about. But I feel like in LA, there's been a lot of synchronicity. I feel like there's these centers in the world where just people are attracted to LA, New York, Miami, and then, of course, internationally, there's, those usual places where people just tend to gravitate, and they've kind of become centers of business. And that's really fascinating to me because I know people who've been unsuccessful in other places, and just by sheer fact of proximity to success, like they want to start a tech company, they move to Silicon Valley, and all of a sudden they're in the flow of that. Have you ever noticed anything like that before?
Well, I think the tech company is great. Like when I go visit San Francisco, you're always in a startup, and that's your thing. And if you're not, you're just not even. It's not relevant. Like if you're like about my single friends that are dating, like, oh, another founder, and then in LA. You have entrepreneurs, you got actors, you got movie directors, musicians. Like to me, that was the capital of the world. I think the COVID thing has really changed it for a while. But anywhere you go, there's probably the community is going to be key. And if you're trying to start a business in the middle of Kansas and nobody understands you and everyone's got a job at the army base, you're going to struggle. I mean, you've got to be around like-minded people to inspire you. And that's how you and I met. We were sort of the same social groups, and we want to be inspired by entrepreneurs, and it levels us up a little bit. It makes us reach a little higher.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And so, look, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today was the concept of luck. So I think both you and I have been very fortunate in our lives, and we've had a lot of opportunity that we have either forged or that's come our way, that's been a part of synchronicities that we've been involved in. Just us meeting was part of a pretty interesting synchronicity. And one of the things that, I was thinking about the other day, Bart, is what is luck? Like, is luck just a roll of the dice? Like, is it the cards we're dealt when we're born? And there's some component of that that's just in the air, or is it something else? Is it something that we can actually go out there and affect, or something that we've been affecting, from day one?
This is a pretty deep conversation. There's all the ways to look at this. Are we talking about luck in the fact that we're financially successful, or people get lucky with an idea or timing, or just lucky to be born in a country that's free? Because I would visit a friend of mine recently, and she reminded me that her and her family escaped from Cambodia, 35 years ago on a boat, on a dinghy, and came to America and didn't speak English. And she wakes up every day grateful just to be in America and not being shot at. And so that kind of like perspective is really humbling for the rest of us, that I was born here and just went to an average middle class school. And a lot of my friends from high school have pretty struggling lives, second divorces, working at Chili's, like they're just doing that thing. What I did is I just thought, what's the most outlandish thing I can think of? And let me go do that. And I wasn't afraid to fail. And I did it over and over and again, and kept getting up, getting up and getting kicked over and getting up. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of luck. I think the most definition people use, at least in the self-help community, is luck is preparedness meets opportunity. And a big example, when an opportunity, I screwed it up. When I was 21, I had published my first book, and this is back in 87, 99, something, 91. And I got a guy sitting in my living room, my dad, and he goes, "Hey, we can do this thing called an infomercial." And this is the same time like Tony Robbins started running his infomercials, and I turned it down. I didn't know, Shaahin. I was 21. I didn't know what it was so young. I didn't understand it. It seemed like a lot of, and I look back on it, I said, what was I thinking? Like
Mm.
luck, opportunity, but was I ready? Maybe not, but I think I could have got ready. But you know what? Those come and go. And if you don't jump on that train, you just don't know. Not like I was kicking myself. I did okay in the end, but you know what? It was interesting because yeah, sometimes it knocks on the door and you don't even see it. And years later, you're like, oh man, I could have done that.
Yeah. And it's not a straight line, right? It's not like if you don't do that, then everything goes sideways, right? It's like more like a tree with branches, right? So maybe the Tony Robbins thing would have kept you from a different opportunity, but it took you to a different one. So kind of I think it's much more complex. But I'll go one further. I think I liked your example, kind of that whole self-help example. But what if luck was directly related to risk? So Nassim Taleb in his book Black Swan talks about successful people and how their level of success is directly linked to the amount of risk that they take. So if you look at somebody who's employed at a lower level position, his risk is minimal, right? So he's guaranteed a paycheck, whereas the guy that owns the company might not get a paycheck ever. So his risk is maximum. So the amount of reward in general in life can be traced back to risk. And so I would almost ask or even argue, can luck be measured to what you said, preparedness, but also to the ability to take risks and the interest in taking risks and the action that's involved in taking risks?
Well, if you're talking about home runs, obviously, like the number one batter ever has more strikeouts than home runs. So as you think about going up to bat, you're like, do I make a one? Do I make a single? Do I make a double? Or do I risk it all and go for the home run or strike out and let down my team? So that mentality of just simple baseball mentality is very similar. There's just no way you're ever going to be in the final race of the Olympics unless you've sacrificed 4 years or 9 or 10 years to even get there. Like people don't get to the NBA finals without 15 years of hard work, and they've given up relationships. I mean, we're talking about especially CEOs. A lot of people get out of college, or they're in college and they get pregnant, or they start having kids and they go, you know what? I had a by the way, one of the biggest movies I was in, that lead actor, he said, "Dude, I can't do this anymore. My wife is having a baby. I've got to quit acting and work full time at the restaurant." I could just see the anguish on his face because he loved acting and he was like a little bit, I would say equal on the billing, but he had potential. But you know what? He had that conversation in his head of security versus risk, and he chose security. And I think that's a decision a lot of people make, and therefore they never get the big break or they never get the home run because they're not there. We call it luck. I guess it is a little bit luck when you're sitting next to a director, or someone introduces you to the founder of something and they give you a $15 billion investment. A little bit, but a lot of the fact that you found yourself in the right place at the right time.
No, that's true. So two funny things, interesting. So number one, I have been shot at on a boat in Cambodia. But we could share that story later on. The second part is that I came as an immigrant from Iran, right? Packed up literally overnight everything that we had, and came through Germany, but eventually to the States with nothing. And so I feel that, I understand that, and it's funny because from the outset, you look at some people and like they can do no wrong, right? Like you just look at them in the world and like, there's guys, I mean, we both know these kinds of guys that like everything they touch turns to gold, and I think that's largely from the perspective of us looking out at somebody else. Like you never know the pain that somebody has. You never know the struggle that somebody has internally, right? And people lie, and people, particularly men, keep that inside. So they won't let the world know at any cost the struggles that they have. So oftentimes what you'll see is, hey, this guy did this guy did that. Look at all these great successes, but you'll never see their failure. So we just assume that he must be the luckiest guy on earth without having any uh, any relationship to what he's gone through to achieve what he did. But on the same note, there's people who are the flip side of that. People who it just seems like everything they do messes up and goes wrong. And I guess the real question, the core question is this the cards that they're dealt? Some people might argue, and I'll tell you what, I am not completely convinced that there is not some element of just cosmic moon dust, like gravitational karma, whatever you want to call it, going against somebody. And I mean, both you and I talk about this often. We joke about the new age movement and whatnot. I am not a fan of woo-woo or manifestation or any of that stuff. But sometimes it sure seems like the cards are stacked against some people and the other direction for others.
I've spent a lot of time in India, and one of the interesting things I've seen about that culture is that their caste system, there's names, and all people in the color of the skin are exactly the same, but they know their place in the world. And if you're in this certain caste, there's this incredibly cultural hypnosis that says you can never elevate. And even though it's a democracy, even though they can't judge you in the color of your skin, but they know I'm a worker class, I'm never going to be a Brahmin or whatever. And I find that so fascinating that they kind of buy into the fact or the idea that they were reincarnated into this caste and therefore this is their only limitation. So it's like the elephant with the string, and growing up with the metaphor is like they feel the limitations are there. I have met people that seem to be a walking disaster, and almost always because of my special skill set, doing handwriting analysis, their handwriting shows this particular mental disorder, whether it's unorganized or fear of success or self-esteem or exaggeration or pathological lying. I mean, they're damaged from childhood or whatever happened, and yet they're still recreating this drama. So I don't see too many people that just are in a vortex of bad luck, Shaahin. I think it's self-created bad luck without spending the time going through their own personal development journey to clean up their issues.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're born, into a low caste and somewhere like India, okay, sure, I get it. I get that. But, there's people who raise up out of that, right? And there's all kinds of movies about those people. But let's move on. Let's move on from that, because I assume those folks are not really going to be our viewers.
I don't think they're listening to
or
it.
our listeners.
I concur.
So let's assume that you've had, the basics of life sorted, and now you're at a place where you want to improve your luck, right? Is that possible? Can you take more risks? And it's funny because I've got friends who have started companies, and I've got friends that are entrepreneurs, and a lot of the time when I mention risk, they're like, okay, let's do it all in. And I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a second. Risk doesn't mean that you just foolishly go in and do anything and take a risk, right? You don't just jump off a cliff and hope the parachute opens. It entails taking educated risks, having many options to choose from, and having a process of thinking clearly and discerning. And when you do that, then it's okay to take those risks. I teach that often to my Amazon students, because the process of selling on Amazon is a little bit like voodoo. And this is what I mean by that. You cannot know if the product that you pick, the category that you pick, the time that you're choosing it, the supplier that you choose, all the stars are going to be in alignment. At any point, something could happen that could mess your whole flow up. So what do? Well, you could say, well, this isn't for me. I can't handle the stress. And some people do that and they get a job, like you're saying, and go wait tables or whatever. Good. Some of the rest of us are like, no, I want to take the risk. Let's go. Well, in that case, you need to have as much information as possible from the highest source that you can achieve that knowledge. And then you move forward making the decisions based on your best guess. And a lot of times it is a guess, right? It's a little bit voodoo. And I'll tell you, Bart, the difference between the students that succeed and the students that fail, the ones that really make it and the ones that go nowhere or don't go anywhere big, is really the not that they pick the right things and they roll the dice and it hits the right number, or they put the ball, the little spinny ball hits in the right color. It's the fact that regardless of what happens, they continually change and improve. They continually fix what's wrong and they tweak it until they get what they want out of it. And I feel like that's really a metaphor for life and how life operates, because you'll go play the game and it's very much so unlike jumping out of an airplane, because jumping out of an airplane, you either land or you die. But in business, particularly in Amazon and e-commerce, or I would say in any business, it's a process of jumping and then adjusting and adjusting a little more and adjusting a little more and continually jumping until you perfect it.
Someone was asking me about parachuting recently, and they're like, have you done that? Would you ever do that? I said, I did it. I did it once. And obviously I'm here, so I survived. But the risk reward to that seemed really high to me, since none of it was in my control. I didn't pack the chute. I wasn't jumping. I wasn't even the guy. I was on the back of somebody else. They go, yeah, but you scuba dive every year. I've been scuba diving for 20 years. Like, I feel like, and maybe I have an illusion, I feel like I'm in control. I feel like I have 60, 90 seconds to control an air problem. I feel like I got my partner. I feel like I did all my tanks myself. So I have over prepared. I've trained really well. I know all the situations. I don't get floated by a partner. So I'm extra prepared. And if something bad happens, like luck, shark shows up, right? I hopefully am prepared to not. That's bad. That's a great example of bad luck, right? But if you're prepared, I wouldn't freak out. I wouldn't go bananas. I wouldn't. But somebody would if they're new. So I think you're talking about is they constantly improve themselves. But isn't that the basis of like a championship mentality of people that just get back up? I mean, yeah, sometimes people get thrown in the middle of Star Wars when they're 16. That's a little bit of luck, a little bit of timing. Obviously, that career trajectory is going to be amazing. But for the rest of us normal people, I think it's exactly what you're talking about. It's consistency, it's persistence, it's learning, it's not giving up, and it's consistently taking feedback. I was thinking about some of the questions, and if somebody emailed us and said, hey man, what's the secret to marketing? You know what the secret to marketing is? Testing. I mean, it's literally, that's such a dumb answer, because everybody wants a secret to success and just give me the secret. But it's not. It's letting the market tell you what you want to do and getting all these feedback loops so that when you do put $100,000 down, you know it's going to pay back because you've already put 20 and then 40 and 80, and it's always come back, in the slot machine of, Facebook ads or whatever the advertising is. So no, I don't think when someone gambles $1 million on an ad campaign, they're not really gambling. They've probably started at $10 a day and $20 a day and $80 a day. People that are spending $700,000 a month on advertising, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
But they're only doing that because they know they're going to get a payoff because they had a lot of history to prove it.
yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. At the end of the day, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it's about. So, it's like I try to think like, so, I operate this Amazon course, Amazon Mastery, where we teach people how to succeed on Amazon. And we get people from all levels. Like I've got a 16-year-old in the course right now, and he's kicking ass. And I've got, a guy who's like 65-year-old retired guy who's like interested in, selling products. And so we get people from all over the place. And I like to see what I could do to make each student maximum success, right? To give them the maximum level of success possible. And I always think about it and I'm like, man, like, what is the thing that differentiates, right? And people are like, oh, Shaahin, you're the hack guy. Like, come on, you're the hacker. Like, give us the hack. What's the hack, right? Show us the hack to. And I'm like, okay, well, there's hacks that you can do, right? Those are just tactics, techniques, and they range from white hat, gray hat, black hat. Anything is possible in the world, and you have to measure the risks and benefits of all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the thing that's going to make you successful isn't any hack. There's no hack to success. The hack is hard work and discipline. But not only that, it's being able to make those adjustmts, which means you have to be capitalized enough to be able to make a mistake, fail, and get right up. If you're planning on having a hit and you go all in on that one thing, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you need to make an adjustment and you don't have enough bankroll, you're going to fail. It's not because your idea was wrong. It's not because you weren't resilient enough. It was because you just did not have enough capital. You didn't give yourself enough bandwidth, enough space in order to make that happen. I remember back in the day, back with our friend Stuart Wilde, who wrote The Trick to Money is Having Some. He was a friend of mine. We talked about him previously. We used to go out to casinos, and Stuart invented this thing called Mongolian blackjack, where he developed this system, which was kind of like part mentalism, part like weird spiritualism, and part just card counting. he was a brilliant guy, but he really knew how to count cards. And we would go into these casinos in groups. Everybody would break off so they wouldn't think we were a clique. And we would use his systems, and because we all knew how to count cards. But the important thing when you play in blackjack, and I'll tell you a funny story about that too. He had some crazy techniques. But the important thing when you're playing blackjack, aside from knowing what you're doing, which is very simple to learn, his techniques at least were, is having enough bankroll so that you can weather the storm and come out a winner. And that's one of the key things. So I'll tell you a funny story. So one of his favorite things to do is when a table got stagnant and you wanted to change the dealer, that's kind of the energy gets stagnant. I don't know what that means per se, but you could feel it when you get somewhere and it just doesn't feel right anymore at the table. This is yet another esoteric thing. So one of the hallmarks of what we would do when we would go to these places is we would always order a V8. I don't know. Do they still make V8? Is that still a thing?
They do make V8. So carrot, it has celery, which is not my favorite, but they make it.
Tomato juice, right? So you would put the V8 on the table and then you would start playing. And if things did not go your way, you would start to get very clumsy and
so funny.
Tip over the table and spill the V8. And this would devastate all the players on the table. Whatever the hand was, they could no longer play it. They couldn't kick you out because it was an honest mistake. And they would have to clean the table and change the dealer. And it was an amazing, this is a hack. This was an amazing
hack. A total hack, yeah. It's a break in the action. You got the house rules. You got to stop cleaning up. Got to count all the money. You got to replay the camera. Yeah, it takes a while. It breaks the energy. It's a state break.
Yeah. In NLP, it's what we call a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And so this was just, one of the many things that, that we did in those days to kind of, break things up, break the pattern, and it was fun. But at the end of the day, just my point is this, that you have to make sure that you have enough space. So I have a lot of people now coming through wanting to join the course, and we handpick all the people from the course right now. So if someone's going to be joining Amazon Mastery, we're there, interviewing each person, making sure it's right for them. And we do reject a lot of people. A lot of people don't get in. And some of the time, what I see is people have enough money for the course, they have enough money for the product, but if it doesn't work, that's it. And you
You mean
got
that they have no endurance? They couldn't do a second product.
yeah.
Their
Well,
bankroll's too small to really make this a side hustle.
that's right. And so, I tell them to go back to foundational thinking. Go do whatever you have to do to make the money so you can be comfortable and relax, sit back and let the business work for you. And when you do that, you're going to succeed even more. Why? Because you're not worried every day, like, oh my God, am I going to lose this money? It's whatever. It's going to be whatever. It's going to be like, hey, I got this money set aside to succeed on Amazon. It'll be there. I'm going to keep trying it. And I'm going to make it succeed. And you're not worried about that being your last $1,000. And if it's gone, it's gone. And oh my God, what's going to happen? And it's the people who don't worry. It's one of these great ironies that succeed more than the people who have less, who are more worried about it. It's like that concept that you and I were talking about, how money is attracted to money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. I think that principle is really, a universal principle. Like back in the day when I was hanging out with movie stars and famous people and, all those kinds of things, I don't do too much of that anymore. But, back in the day when I did, the funniest thing is it's like every single one of these things is a club, right? So you're hanging out with billionaires. Like if you're a billionaire, other billionaires want to be around you. It's like, why? Like they could be around anybody, but no, you just join the club. If you're famous and there's other famous people, they hang out with other famous people. That's why you see 10 or 20 famous people together, because it's like, oh, you're famous, right? And then there's that crossing, right? So rich people hang out with famous people hang out with rich people. It's like you're part of the club.
Was it your story you told me you used to go down and hang out at a certain hotel in Santa Monica and just be around affluent people? Or was that Stuart Welk? I feel like you told me that story because you lived in Santa Monica and it was just, you were just there and you just kept running into interesting people.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. And yeah, that's absolutely another one of the cool things about Stuart that, he taught us is like, he's like, look, if you don't have any money, fake it till you make it. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because you replicate in your mind the feeling of being wealthy. And the mind sometimes can be tricked into not knowing the difference. So what's the cost of walking into a Ferrari dealership and sitting in the cars, if they let you, and smelling the leather? In looking at the paint and visualizing yourself in that car, right? Doesn't cost anything. What's the cost of sitting pre-COVID, or now the COVID's almost over, I'm hoping, in a fancy hotel, in the fanciest hotel in town, and ordering a coffee, right? I mean, $5, $10, what is it? $10, $11 with a tip, right? You pay $11, you sit there all day. You get your journal, you get your phone, they got Wi-Fi. It's fantastic. It's the best $11 you'll ever spend. But now you're part of the club. And that's, what I did in the early days.
I really hate to use the word energy. Like to me, that's a little foo-foo, but I don't know how else to say it except there's a comfort level. And since energy and light is vibration, so there's some science behind vibrations and music like that. But if you get, for example, my father says, ever since I was a kid, I've had a $2 bill in my pocket because I never ever wanted to be broke. Ever, ever, ever. This is like 1950s, right? And so for a while, I kept a $100 bill in my pocket. It was very interesting because I never felt broke. And feeling broke makes you make poor decisions. Or I can't do that, or I can't buy that, or she would never go out with me, or whatever. So having the feeling of the internal dialogue of wealthy people is one of the keys to shifting that. Like interesting story, this weekend I spent with some friends from Los Angeles, and one of them was young, not very wealthy, real job. One of them was actually doing really, really well as an attorney, making a lot of money as far as our concerns, but she still had the mentality of a street girl because she grew up really poor, grew up with like crackhead parents, and she'll tell you these stories. And she kept saying things, oh, that's such a privileged white thing to say, or that's such a rich person thing to say. And I was like, well, thank you. I'd like to think like a rich person. But instead of saying, yes, I've coached myself out of middle class, I've coached myself to say these things. I'm like, yeah, we can afford that, or we'll just shift hotels, or like I want to say that because I want to think like the wealthy people. But the thoughts came way before the money did, Shaheen. I had to change my beliefs, change my thoughts, change my dialogue. And it's interesting because you can't coach your friends, right? I couldn't stop and like coach your language at lunch because your friends don't listen to you. But it's kind of sad because you're like, you literally change your language, and maybe you will perceive that you already have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars coming through your fingers. Now, how do you coach your friends? You don't really. You have to kind of wait till they raise their hand and say, let me see, can you help me?
You can't. You can't. Yeah, somebody has to want to change, and they have to take the action to do that. I've read probably thousands of books by now, right? I love books. Yeah, I definitely read thousands of books. And when you think about it, I used to gift people books. I don't really do that anymore. Why? Well, what's the investment in a book these days? $20, $30 maybe, right? Most books are even less. Ebooks, $10. If that person isn't willing to make the investment into buying that book, they're probably not going to read it, right? Then you're just sending them a paperweight. So the other person is going to want to needs to take some initiative. And I will go further to say that initiative needs to cost them. There has to be an effort expended in order for them to find the full benefit from that. You get more benefit when you pay for something.
Well, it's skin in the game. We were talking about a scholarship from one of our programs, and there's a lot of people that sincerely can't afford our programs in India. Like, we're really high priced. We're like the Mercedes of psychology and handwriting analysis. And I said, we just don't give things away because they'll never appreciate it. Just like we're topping, like, well, that sounds so like, so we do this. Why don't we create a program where we can create a partial scholarship, but they've got to go 40 hours of community service, like put in the time and bring us certificates and say, here's my 40 hours of customer service. And we haven't done it yet, but I thought the same way, because I have a strong opinion that if people don't invest in the program, they don't perceive the value. And so, in fact, it leads to a couple of questions. We can go to email anytime. We've got a lot of questions for us today, but that is an interesting thing, is people need to put skin in the game. And that's why some parents don't just give their kids money. They make them work and make them mow lawns, and they make them do the hard work because the parents know the value of money. And then some kids with silver spoons them out end up, overdoing on drugs when they're 25. So it's a hard thing. I don't have kids like you do, but it's got to be a similar conversation about how much do you give out of love and how much do you hold back out of the fact that you need to create your own muscle.
Yeah, that's interesting. With my kid, I do, my wife and I, we basically do what both of our parents did, which I think works marvelously, right? Okay, so the whole allowance thing is really a Western American thing. We don't have that in Eastern culture, particularly in Middle Eastern culture where I come from. So the going line for us, how we were raised, and which I do with my son also, is whatever you need in life, mom and dad will buy it for you. No question. You need money? I'll give you money. What do you want to buy? Right. But I know that you are smart enough and you have the discernment to know what is necessary, what you need, and what you want, and what you need right now. And you know that you don't get everything that you want just because you want it. And it works marvelously. Whereas other kids, get allowances. Our kid, you need money, you want to buy something, I'll buy it for you. It's not just that we're wealthy and we have money. It's the fact that it sets up a different mindset. It doesn't set up a mindset of lack, but rather one of fostering trust and intelligence. And that he's smart enough to be on the team. My kid doesn't just go like, hey, let's go buy a toy wherever it is. My kid's on Craigslist finding deals. And then if he wants something, he wanted a foosball table. He found it on Amazon. He's 7 years old. He found it on Amazon himself. He's got a laptop. He found out how much they go for new. He went on Craigslist. He found one for, I don't know, it was $100 on Amazon. He found one for $25. We drove him there with money that he had earned from his business, which we could talk about later. And he negotiated with the guy in an unbelievable manner to get this foosball table for $10 when the guy was asking 25. And the guy was so floored that a 7-year-old was negotiating with him. He just didn't know what to say. He just did not know what to say. And he wasn't letting up. But I think that's the way that you can teach kids how to understand not only the value of money, but that there's other intrinsic value in other things, in human communication, in being able to work for what you're getting. He's just a baby, I mean, to us he is. So he can't go out there and work, but what he can do is if he wants something, he can negotiate. So that whole experience of getting that toy wasn't just us giving him money to buy the toy. It was a lesson in negotiation. It was a lesson in discovery. I mean, there were so many different elements to that it was like, oh, okay. And he loves that. So he plays with it every day. And whenever his friends come over, he tells them the whole story of how he got it. And he almost doesn't want to get things any other way now.
Someone told me that the value of art is not the painting, it's the story behind the painting that the
Sure.
person tells his friends. Let me tell you how I got that. Like it's just all this whole ritual of how people love to tell the journey because they love to do that. So working for it is just as much fun as getting it, unless perhaps you're getting a gold medal, and that's pretty fun probably.
Yeah. No, that's very much so true. So, I think we can get to the questions. I think one of the other points that I wanted to get through on this specific podcast, and we can go through this on a separate podcast too, is kind of, I think, people who have not experienced big financial success wonder why often. And the question that they ask is always really interesting to me is, how do I get there? And my answer, one of the young people who I'm mentoring right now is constantly asking me that. And I kind of feel like Yoda, Bart, where I'm like, it's not the destination.
Mm.
And, I think I narrowed it down to trying to explain to him that being wealthy is the side effect,
It's interesting.
right? Riches are the side effect. They're not the destination. There's nobody I know, and we both know a lot of these guys, but millionaires, I know a few billionaires, people that are hugely successful. That thing, that dollar, the wealth is never the point of what they're doing. It's never the point. I don't know anybody whose thing is, I want to make $50 million and they go out there and do it. I know one guy who just sold, company for nearly $1 billion to one of these one of the biggest companies in the world. And, if you ask that guy, 5 years ago when he started his company, like, what are you going to do? You're going to make, $1 billion. He wouldn't know what you're talking about. He would be like, no, I'm going to do this great thing. And he's focused on doing that great thing. The money is a side effect. And
So you're saying, like, for example, if you're physically building your body and you spend 2 hours a day in the gym, like I follow The Rock, for example, and I really love that guy for some reason, but I don't have the discipline to do what he does. So
mm,
the muscles are a side effect of a discipline and a habit lifestyle, an eating of saying yes and no to different food options. Then you could look not like him, but you could look good. It's a side effect. So the goal for him may be looking great, right? But it's a side effect of all the small decisions he makes in a day. Are you saying that the business itself or the discipline of working and achieving and of sort of doing business right, the money's a side effect?
yeah, it's the doing. It's the thing that you're doing. Like with herbal ecstasy, when I started herbal ecstasy, like, dude, I knew I wanted to be rich because I've seen what poor is like, and that sucks. Like, you definitely don't want to be poor. I say this often now. The greatest injustice you can do to yourself in America is being poor. It is the worst thing. It's way too. I can't afford to be poor. It is way too expensive to be poor. The poor pay more for everything. They're treated worse. They get lower quality things, right? So if you can prevent it, you guys do not be poor in America. And I can explain that further. I know that's a very inciting comment. I don't mean it to
It's
be.
a long conversation, but I
It's
love it because
a
it
longer
seems so
topic.
simple. Okay, two guys that are wealthy tell me not to be poor. It's literally like it's a disease. Like you need to think about it and go, how do I train my kids and my family? And like I need to avoid that. That's a problem. And that's an interesting point because it's almost like a disease and it's hard to get out of it once you got sucked into that vortex.
Yeah, I mean, we could give examples all day long, but
But again, those people aren't listening to this podcast, probably.
yeah, there you
They
go.
might have been there.
There you go. And it kind of comes back down to, I think the last topic that I wanted to talk about, which is, the things that the world rewards us for monetarily. So if you could think about it like this, I think making money, what does the world give you money for? Like, what are the things? So the most common rookie mistake is to think that the world rewards you for your time.
Yep.
Not true. We talk about like graphic artists, for example. We hire a lot of graphic artists, and we had one guy in the course who's like went to schools, got degrees or whatever, and he's doing his Amazon products, and he's going to do super well. But he starts doing his own graphics, and it takes him 4 days to do one logo, and it looked not that great. And I told him, I said, Bud, like, why are you doing this? He's like, well, I thought I would do it. I don't want to pay anybody else. I'm like, that's a $10 an hour skill set. Like there are people in India and Pakistan that are masters of Photoshop and Adobe and this, and they'll do better than you can do. You don't get rewarded for your time. So a better example is this, that the other day we have these mastermind calls, and the students get to ask me anything they want to about Amazon, how to win on Amazon. We've got several multi-million-dollar brands that are selling. So it's a good opportunity for them to kind of feed into, how do we do it? How do we sell $1 million worth of tea in a month? How do we sell $1 million worth of kitchen knives? And how can they do that? So one of the students asked me something very technical. So it was like a very technical thing about how do you list a product on a page using this HTML whatever thing, right? For a second, Bart, I was like, dude, I don't know, right? I've got people who know. And usually what we do in the course is I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to put you on with Steve or Alan or one of my top guys or the top Amazon guys in the world. And they love doing that technical stuff and they'll deal with it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm the Amazon guy, right? I'm widely considered one of the top Amazon gurus in the country. And, I'm doing like interviews and stuff. And I don't know how to do the simple thing. Is that bad? And then it occurred to me that no, the world doesn't pay you for that. That's a $10 an hour skill set. I pay people in India, Pakistan, all these great countries, not Cambodia because they shoot at you on boats. I will tell that story before we're done. But, I pay people for that. So why do I need to know that? Well, does the world reward you for that? No, the world gives you $10 an hour for that. What's the world rewarding me for? Why am I making millions and these guys making $10 an hour? And the difference is that I'm a thought leader. And it occurred to me that the world pays you, it rewards you for being a thought leader in your space. The technical components of it, the real like detailed specifics, sometimes you need to know something about them. I could learn how to do that if I had to. I'm not that dumb, but I'm not great at that kind of stuff. It's not really my expertise. What I'm great at is the broad strokes, the big picture. How do we get you there? And all that other stuff is, like Napoleon Hill says in Think and Grow Rich, really specialized knowledge that at the end of the day is very easily, you can buy it, you can rent it, you can borrow it. Some people steal it, but that kind of information you can get. So what you want to be in your field, in your area, and whatever it is that you're doing is you want to be a thought leader. Not only that, you want to be broad strokes. You want to be the broad stroke guy.
I think the broad stroke is confusing because a lot of times people say the riches are in the niches. You need to have an expertise. So yes, you should not get stuck down the rabbit hole of technical. And I think you're familiar with this story, but I believe it's Henry Ford that was known for running at the time the largest company in the world, the Ford Motor Company. And he had literally 7 phones on his desk. And he said, I don't know the answers to half your questions, but on the other end of each of these phones is the guy that does.
Yeah.
And he was known for delegation. So you're talking about the concept of being an executive at a company and perceiving yourself as, listen, I'm getting paid to make really high level decisions with all the data. And then these people execute the plans. And what if you're not at that level where you've got systems and 100 employees, Shaahin? You just have to learn to say no to $10 items and say yes to all the things that make you the decision maker. How do you move from 6 figures to 7 figures?
Well, it's not black and white. It's not, either one thing or another. Foundational thinking, bud, you got to build up. So you build the foundations, right? You start with one property, like when we're talking about real estate. You got to start. You got to start somewhere. But I'll give you I think maybe to your credit and to mine, I'll give you an example. So I know this guy who is a world famous chef. Well, so let's say he's one of the top 10 chefs in the world. And so I take my wife to a beautiful birthday dinner at one of his restaurants in Las Vegas, one of the top restaurants in the world. And I mean, it's everything that you would want the restaurant to be, right? I mean, it's spectacular. You walk in, everybody knew us. We come in, there's a bottle of wine, compliments of the chef, and then dish after dish is coming out. Here's the appetizer, here's the thing, especially for you, whatever. And then the chef comes and sits with us halfway through the meal, right? My buddy, and everybody's staring at us at the table like, who are these people, right? Or whatever. And I look at him and I say, I knew him from back in the Herbal Ecstasy days. And I because he was just starting to come up in the chef's world. And I look at him and I go, how much of this stuff do you make? He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, I don't know the last time I cooked here. He's like, Jose cooks the food. And he points over to this guy, a really nice guy, but the guy's probably earning, I don't know, a little more than whatever the minimum is for that position. And that guy's preparing all the food. And so I go, you don't actually cook the food?
You're the that loudly.
The picture is there. I'm pointing to the billboard outside the window. We're looking outside the window at this big hotel. Like there's a billboard of dude outside with like a frying pan. And he's like, no, we just did that for the picture. He's like, I've never cooked in here. I'm like, well, what do you do? He's like, well, it's my idea. It's my name behind the whole thing, right? And I said, well, you do the recipes. He's like, yeah. Jose helps me, right? His name isn't Jose, by the way, but he said, Jose helps me, and, Juan helps me and Julie helps me. And, they help me, with kind of the coordination, but I put it together and, he's a thought leader. That's what he is. He's a thought leader. He comes out and says, this is what the food is going to be like. This is what the experience is going to be like. This is what the restaurant's going to be like. And he lets other people execute. He doesn't need to flip the frying pan. Or, a lot of famous photographers, right? They come out with the concept and somebody else is actually clicking the little thing on the camera, clicking the shutter on the camera and setting up the lights and doing all the work. But they're a thought leader. So ultimately, this is what I would say, right? You can't come out and be a thought leader from day one because you have to build up to that. But you can make that the ultimate goal of where you want to be in whatever category you're in whatever business you're in. You could say, I am going to be the leader in that category. And ultimately, that's what you build to or towards.
I think in any industry, if you had an employee that you got at 21, like the casino business, and go back to the blackjack, they would love you to learn all the rules in the casino before they promote you to executive. Like they would love that. Or if you're in the the gaming division, they want you to play blackjack and poker because you need to kind of understand where your employer's at. But if you're going to run the Mirage, for example, you don't necessarily have to have dealt cards. You just need to understand on a broad level all these different puzzles of it. But you're not going to jump in day one and own $1 billion casino. You're going to start a restaurant or a website, or you're going to start whatever podcast you're doing, and you're going to learn all the little roles. Like I know every role on a movie set, but they won't let me touch the lights because that he's on the union, and I probably shouldn't be because I don't really know what kind of size light bulb that is, right? But the director doesn't need to know the size light bulb either, because the art director has a handle, the DP, the director of photography. So I think that's delegation at the best. I mean, is our audience leaders and CEOs? Because I'm thinking that's just so important, because really you're getting paid to make smart strategic decisions and decide who's going to execute them. And of course, if you have the charisma to get the team to follow you with stuff beyond money, you'll keep them around forever. I know we've had long conversations on different shows about your ability to maintain your employees all around the world, your real estate business, and you're so good to them that they come back. Your factories in China, they get you on the phone and say, thank you for the gift back. You didn't have to do that. So it's not just the money, it's the ability to hold those relationships over time. But Shaahin, I know you did not give yourself credit, but you built a team of people to help you achieve this dream. Not everybody takes the time to send gift baskets and keep their team happy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And at the end of the day, you want to be at a place where you're doing what I'm doing. And most days, the work that I do is making decisions, making tricky decisions, making important decisions that can impact the business. So thinking through difficult problems is work, but that's what the universe, the world, whatever you want to call it, rewards you for. So, me sitting in a quiet place and writing in a journal or going for a walk, people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working. Why am I working? Well, because I am working through a difficult problem. Or maybe I'm just allowing myself time so I can have bandwidth to solve that problem. And there are days where I just make one decision. And that one decision is more impactful than anything else I do the rest of the week, the rest of the month, the rest of the year. And that's work. That's the work that the world rewards you for.
But that's the decision that only you could make. Most of your employees couldn't have made that decision correctly, and nor would they have the guts to try it. And those are some of the decisions, even like coaches versus head football coaches versus owners. Like, they have to make decisions that are really, really challenging, and they get rewarded for it handsomely if they get it right. And if they get it wrong, they're the Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's right. Which brings us back to where full circle to risk, right? And building your own luck. So you take calculated risks, you build your own luck, and you find yourself in a place where you can spend your day making tricky decisions.
You want to get some email, or you want to get some questions? I mean, we have
Yeah,
gone a
let's
good
do it.
45
Let's do it.
minutes.
Let's
Yeah,
do it. Let's do a couple.
let's do a
Pick your
couple
two
here.
favorite ones.
This is from Danny Zell in Sydney, Australia. He says, what's the fastest way to grow and hack an online guitar teaching business? He said, my entire touring and music career got sidelined during COVID. Most students are Zoom, but it's a bunch of long days in front of the camera.
So
he's a teacher, like us. He's a teacher, like us.
Yeah.
But I don't teach one-on-one. Do you?
No, but I mentor people one-on-one. It just depends.
Sometimes. Okay. So how do you get a guitar teacher to scale up into like six figures is what he's looking for, and replace that touring income?
Yeah, I think he's got the right idea as far as wanting to start a business. We talk about diversifying and diversity as far as, what your businesses are. So you have your job, that's one pillar of the foundation, right? And so now he's thinking of starting a business. That can be pillar two, diversifying, maybe putting some of that money into real estate and then some into the market. And you can have nice 4 pillars of diversity where you can be in a good place financially. So as far as, the musical instrument business, that's fantastic. And I would actually look at what other channels you could sell that in. And then, like we talked about, riches are in the niches. Go as niche as you can. So if you're going guitar, think about guitar strings. If you're thinking about guitar strings, I don't know, think about guitar picks. If you're thinking about guitar picks, think about picks for I don't know, disabled guitar players. Whatever that niche is, you want to narrow it down as much as possible and find the area. And we teach this in our Amazon course. So my students know, I teach this often, how you do that, but you funnel down and you purify until you get to that one product, that golden nugget that you find. And there's a ton of resources that we teach with. And if people want to reach out, I'm happy to share those resources with you. But you do the research, you narrow down the niche, and you find that one product that's got vulnerabilities in the market, that the competition is weak. We call it low-hanging fruit. And you go after that.
Let me digest what I think you just said, because I would have answered that totally differently. And I think you're totally brilliant for this. And I'll tell you why. It sounds like you said, hey, you have this teaching business. Go sell a product on Amazon to people that play guitar, and then use those contacts to now sell more teaching. Did you put that together? Is that what I heard you do?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing, because
totally.
he's going to create a list of people that play guitar picks at certain levels, like beginner guitar, right? This is a
Right.
guitar pick for beginners, even a same damn guitar pick. But then
That's
he's got a list of beginner guitars he can market to. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Um,
we do a lot of that in Amazon. And as far as reverse funneling, bringing people from Amazon onto another platform, bringing your people from your other platform onto Amazon. So the world has changed, and you got to be creative, because there's probably a guy who teaches guitar who's not as good as you, who's got a lot more business than you. So you
that's
have to,
amazing.
yeah, go ahead.
I love this story, and I think you probably know Perry Belcher. He's such a funny marketer, but his one of my favorite stories is he kept got in the candle business, and so he bought up wicks, because you can't make candles without wicks,
Yeah.
WI, and he basically bankrupted this poor old lady that had this candle making shop forever, and he felt really guilty about it, because he went and got all the customers that bought wicks, and all of a sudden, like boom, he was able to outbuy from China all these things, and it was such an interesting story of the wicks equal the candle business, but no one thinks about the wick. It's just a piece of it. How I would have answered that question, and maybe it's because I'm also have been doing the coaching and the training so long, is I would want to scale away from one-on-one as much as possible and get into some kind of group coaching program or pre-recorded content, so that when you do meet your student, it's either very nailed down questions or very special technique, or it's a group class where everyone's practicing at the same time, and then maybe for a different level of price, you get one-on-one access. But you're not just competing against Fender, like just not just a video course, because that's not what you're looking for. They do want the personal attention, but some kind of hybrid between an online course, a group coaching program, and then some videos. Because what I noticed being a guitar player is there's some real fundamentals that you have to nail down. And then there's a lot of special cool hacks and stuff. But without the fundamentals, which I'm sure he's teaching to the new students all the time, I would pre-record those and see if I could even hire some people to help them nail that. But you're right, I would go to the thought leader, create the content and the curriculum, and then limit his accessing groups. That's the way I would have answered that.
Yeah, good answer. And it looks like, unfortunately, we're going to have to do the other questions on the next call, because we are exactly at an hour. Bart, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they reach you?
Hey man, I'm always on Instagram at Bart Baggett, of course, BartBaggett. If you want to learn about my programs, go to bartbaggett.com. Our latest program is our Life Design by Prism. And of course, you can catch any of my books at Amazon and Audible. And I thank you for the shout out, Shaahin. And how do they get a hold of you? I'm a big fan of your Amazon program. I actually was asking and begging you to start that years before you did. So what's the domain and how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can always go to ShaahinCheyene.com if you're interested in my book or my other podcast. It's thrillpillcult.com. And we'll share all of this, including Bart's info in the show notes. Additionally, you can go to FBAsellercourse.com, which is another one there. And you can always reach out to me. And my email will be there in the show notes. I respond to every single email and make sure that everybody gets a response. It might take me a little while to get back to you, but I will get back to you. And thank you for joining us. Make sure to like and comment if you are on YouTube, and click the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. And if there's anything else, keep us posted, reach out. All right. Thank you so much, Bart.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.